So, integrative support for vaccines. This is research drawn together from other vaccines because we don't have a COVID-19 vaccine yet. And we're anxiously awaiting some cancer vaccines, some additional cancer vaccines. We have one approved right now. But it's good and useful to look at the research and to see that even something as simple as sleep, a partial night's sleep will reduce immune response to influenza vaccine by over 50%. So we don't want to stress patients out by telling them how important it is that they get a good night's sleep the night before the vaccine, but we do want to encourage a long and healthy sleep going into it and as an overall habit. Sleep after vaccination doubled the frequency of antigen specific Th cells and increased Th1 dominance. And less than 6 hours was strongly linked to a lower protection from Hep B vaccine. So, in a number of vaccine studies, we really see that sleep is critical for getting the optimal immune response. Social connection is also important for antibody responses to vaccines. We can see elevated loneliness and small social networks. Especially, we see that in the elderly, and that is more of a consideration now with physical isolation from a coronavirus. And that is associated with poor antibody response to influenza vaccine. So, that's something that we can screen for and address directly with patients. There are handouts on social isolation and cancer risk that are available in the support lit section of No Oncology, and certainly something we can help work on with our patients. Beta glucans seem to have a role to play as vaccine adjuncts. One trial in neuroblastoma in children. A reminder that beta glucans are in astragalus, oats, all of the medicinal mushrooms, and are generally good at upregulating both innate and adaptive immunity, and certainly make sense as vaccine adjuncts. Probiotics also seem to make a difference. In a systematic review of 12 randomized control trials, prebiotics or probiotics resulted in better antibody titers after vaccine. So that seems like a safe adjunct. A safety note is that more than half of the participants were bedridden, fed with nasogastric tubes, or nursing home residents, and there was not a single documented case of probiotic related sepsis. So I know that's a concern. We always think about that with immunocompromised patients and whether there can be translocation from the gut, but in these studies, there were no incidences of that. And there's another larger systematic review on cancer care and safety of vaccines with demonstrating quite a good safety record. I mean, probiotics in cancer care, with demonstrating a very good safety record. And arabinogalactans, which are a powder, delicious tasting powder from tree medicine. And we have 2 double-blind randomized control trials using them as adjuncts for vaccines. It looks like a slightly higher dose works better. So 4.5 grams seems to be more effective than 1.5 grams daily in order to increase antibody responses to vaccines. Check and screen for deficiency. We already talked about vitamin A for quite a while in one of the earlier parts of this lecture series, but a deficiency will impact the ability of the immune system to mount an antibody response to a vaccine. There is a gender difference in boys versus girls. Girls seem to benefit more from supplementation than boys. So that is something just to keep in mind. And zinc deficiency in the elderly will affect vaccine response as well, and in children. And we did have immune short-term supplementation of 45 milligrams of zinc, which is a little bit higher, alongside the cholera vaccine improved antibody responses. Keeping in mind that these vaccine studies, many of them were done in areas with very poor nutrition, so we might not want to use that high a dose. We have 4 different studies, all of them controlled trials or randomized controlled trials of Japanese Kampo medicine. So that's traditional Chinese medicine, but in the Japanese context. Many of the formulas are almost identical to traditional Chinese formulas, but have different names, showing that different vaccines with cancer, you saw better immune responses or a more favorable profile of myeloid-derived suppressor cells, et cetera, combining them with traditional Japanese herbs. And in healthy volunteers, we have one trial on AHCC, which is a combination product of different medicinal mushrooms, a hybrid product, hybridized mushroom, and they had a better response to influenza B vaccine after taking the AHCC 3 grams a day. Lastly, we have some mouse studies. Again, weaker levels of evidence, but many of these are things that we're doing anyways for our cancer patients and seem to, in mouse studies, improve vaccine responses, and that's melatonin, turmeric, astragalus, and Coriolis. So thinking ahead, thinking about the big picture and how we can help, and doing our best to learn lots, read lots of these articles, and figure out how to best support our patients.